pass slow.
Nashville's neon ignites the night like a promise no dawn can break, but behind those carnival colors runs a corridor chilled by stainless steel and iodine where applause cannot follow. Inside that hush sit 20 drawers tagged with names that once ruled radio, their fingerprints taken after the final encore. We are stepping into that forbidden hallway today, not to chase scandal, but to listen, to the soft testimony of tissue, to the numbers pathologists scribbled when the music stopped. This is not a eulogy and not a tourist brochure, it is the after-show report written in blood type and time of death. Every melody you know is about to sprout a shadow shaped like an autopsy incision, and every standing ovation will echo differently once you hear the silence that replaced it. Walk quietly. The floor remembers vibrations your headphones never could. Jim Reeves believed altitude meant control until a July thunderhead over Brentwood wrapped his Beechcraft in swirling graphite. Gyroscopes tumbled, wings stalled, and the velvet baritone who asked listeners to please understand slammed into cedar with the force of a bass drum. 17 months earlier, Patsy Cline had trusted a Piper Comanche to carry her across a storm line, joking that airplanes beat bus rides. Camden's trees ripped open fuselage and promise alike, sprinkling rhinestones across a Tennessee ravine. Two voices whose harmonies once drifted from the same Opry stage now shared a different airspace. One ruled by gravity, not glamour. Search crews packed their instruments into evidence bags, and reporters learned that black boxes archive truth more faithfully than love letters. Back in town, radio kept spinning their singles, oblivious that thunder had already filed its review. Air was not the only betrayer. December 1996 found Farron Young staring into the blur of cigarette haze and misplaced spotlight. Emphysema chewed each breath, career doubts gnawed everything else, and a revolver delivered the abrupt ending no producer would have scripted. 18 years before, on his 45th birthday, Mel Street extinguished his own candles with the same irreversible flash, depression drowning out the roar of birthday applause. Investigators snapped photographs of powder burns while jukeboxes still pushed quarters through speakers that hadn't gotten the memo. The industry issued condolences about personal demons, a phrase neat enough to print but too small to hold real despair. Fans argued over chart positions while coroners compared trajectories, proving that ballistics data tells starker stories than gossip ever could. Some hearts fought louder battles before surrendering. Marty Robbins, stock car daredevil and troubadour of desert ghosts, survived 2 cardiac ambushes. The third ruptured muscle like a snare drum skin. Surgeons rerouted arteries in a night-long ballet, but 6 days later monitors traced a single unforgiving line. Hank Williams Sr. never reached any operating theater. A wintry backseat ride toward Canton turned fatal when alcohol, morphine, and chloral hydrate played cacophony inside his bloodstream. Hemorrhages painted his heart redder than any rose on stage. Tammy Wynette's exit came cloaked in lawsuits and speculation. An exhumation revealed heart failure fed by blood clots and a medicine cabinet's worth of sedation. 3 different stories, one shared conclusion. Applause cannot drown the rhythm of a damaged ventricle. Catastrophe sometimes announced itself with the squeal of tires or the whisper of a vessel about to burst. Conway Twitty folded aboard his tour bus outside Branson when an aortic aneurysm sprayed life across his abdomen like a snapped guitar string. Surgeons raced the clock, but pressure plummeted faster than any chart slot ever had. Dottie West never made it as far as the surgical wing. Running late for the Grand Ole Opry, she urged her driver to floor the accelerator. A misjudged on-ramp and a concrete divider rearranged organs no scalpel could rescue. Metal, glass, and unanswered curtain calls scattered across asphalt, reminding everyone that destiny sometimes rides shotgun, not center stage. Liquid courage wore many disguises. Keith Whitley woke to an ache no ballad could soothe, poured bourbon until the room blurred, and by noon registered a blood alcohol level flammable enough to fuel jet engines. He collapsed among bottles clinking like cruel wind chimes, skin turning alabaster while phone calls went unanswered. Lefty Frizzle took a slower path, loyal to vodka over decades until hypertension sculpted his arteries into brittle pipes. A clot fired like a starter pistol inside his brain and dropped him mid-conversation at 47. In rehearsal halls, the phrase "hard living" somehow sounded romantic, but morgue forms replaced romance with acute ethanol toxicity and massive stroke, straight nouns that left no room for myth. Not all poisons arrived in shot glasses. Roger Miller kept laughter looping even as cigarette smoke braided itself into carcinogenic rope. A tumor ring strangled his throat and lungs, silencing the king of wordplay before he could land his next pun. Waylon Jennings battled sugar gone rogue. Diabetes gnawed nerves, dimmed circulation, and eventually claimed a foot before taking the rest of him in his sleep. Two rebels who scorned authority surrendered to biology instead, proving freedom has limits when measured in glucose and malignant cells. Their final set lists were written by lab results, not by promoters. Merle Haggard fought pneumonia like a barroom rival that refused to stay knocked down. Hospital stays became revolving doors, each discharge shorter than the last. On his 79th birthday, the infection filled alveoli until oxygen felt like broken glass. Don Williams, the gentle giant, succumbed to emphysema that tightened lungs like rusted fiddle strings, every breath a diminished chord. Respiratory failure offers no dramatic flourish, only a gradual vanishing of air, a fade out long enough for loved ones to memorize the cadence. Neither man feared an audience, but microbes and tar proved more relentless than critics ever were. Glenn Campbell's adversary was invisible until memories slipped through cracks he couldn't name. Alzheimer's rewired verses he'd mastered for decades, yet muscle memory guided fingers across fretboards while his mind shelved names out of reach. Eventually, the disease dimmed every stage light in his head, leaving silence where melodies once nested. George Jones battled hypoxic respiratory failure. ICU alarms screeched while oxygen deserted his blood like fans leaving a rain-soaked festival. Even in twilight, he attempted to hum along with a heart monitor beating off key. Two diametrically opposed timbres, one gentle, one aching, met the same curtain when breath refused its encores. Buck Owens played Bakersfield's Crystal Palace before heading home, content that the crowd still loved every twang. Hours later, his heart decided the set was finished, arresting without dramatics while morning light crept through blinds. Charlie Rich, drifting between genres and highways, checked into a Louisiana motel where a rogue clot lodged in his lung, choking rhythm and reason within minutes. Hank Snow, elder mariner of country music, eased into heart failure at 85 on his Tennessee ranch, the horizon finally still. 3 exits with no tabloid fireworks, just the body's quiet veto overriding willpower. When the music stopped, exam rooms filled with the percussion of stainless instruments and the whisper of latex pulled over hands. Pathologists wrote whole biographies in lacerated medical Latin, laceration of aorta measuring 8 centimeters, blood alcohol 0.47, myocardial necrosis involving 70% of the left ventricle, bilateral consolidation consistent with pneumonia, advanced plaque deposition occluding 95% of lumen, dissolved embolus recovered from pulmonary artery. Scales weighed livers bloated beyond bowling ball heft, and rulers measured knife-straight incisions Y-shaped to respect tradition more than comfort. Assistants rinsed rhinestones, necklaces, and tour passes sticky with dried sweat before sealing them inside manila envelopes. Outside, publicists crafted gentler sentences, swapping raw phrases like clotted blood for peaceful passing and shelving the bitter specifics where only insurers and lawyers would look. The dissonance between those two texts, one clinical, one cosmetic, became the hidden harmony underscoring every posthumous greatest hits collection released for holiday shoppers. Meanwhile, interns new to the job learned that celebrity tissue under fluorescent glare looks no different from a stranger's, shattering the final illusion of stardom's special armor. Fans clung to illusions that greatness granted invulnerability, yet the autopsy table proved democratic about decay. Reeves's shattered wrist bones, Klein's burned upholstery fibers, Whitley's swollen esophagus, and Haggard's sponge-stuffed lungs each testified that talent cannot outplay chemistry or momentum. Marty Robbins's racing helmet sits in a display case still bearing the smell of worn leather, but no plaque mentions the grafts sewing his ventricles. At the Country Music Hall of Fame, visitors can admire Tammy Wynette's gowns, their sequins arranged like tiny constellations, while scarcely a mile away in a courthouse archive lies the toxicology sheet tallying sedatives that silence those constellations forever. One souvenir shop sells commemorative guitar picks stamped with Hank Williams's silhouette. Another restroom down the hall stores the rumor that he died clutching 35 unread telegrams in his coat pocket. Artifacts preserve charisma, while paperwork preserves consequence, and the two rarely occupy the same glass case. Industry mythology often frames catastrophe as destiny, a poetic flourish for documentaries hungry for pathos. Reality is plainer and bleaker, fatigue stacked upon jet lag, promoters treating the human vascular system like an endlessly stretchable guitar string, bargain pilots trusting eyesight instead of instruments, and back-alley doctors scribbling prescriptions by the fistful to keep itineraries from collapsing. One month might include 30 towns, 40 radio promos, 2 television spots, and a charity meet and greet wedged between sound check and encore. Sleep becomes a rumor, nutrition devolves into gas station pastries, and each cough is drowned in codeine rather than rest. Fragments like these layer until they create a dissonant chord no songwriter would dare resolve, and the morgue interprets that cacophony, converting it into measured loss. Milliliters of fluid drained from pericardial sacs, centimeters of plaque found in coronary arteries, micrograms of benzodiazepine detected in vitreous humor. Destiny is merely negligence given a poetic alias. Tabloids relish photogenic tragedy, but they omit the indignities that accompany biological malfunction. They skip over Foley catheters taped to inner thighs, defibrillator welts branding freshly waxed chests, antibiotic drips, stinging veins already scarred by adrenaline rushes, and the way suction tubing gurgles when fluid overwhelms airways. Tammy Wynette's final hospital bracelet bore 5 puncture holes where nurses searched for a cooperative vein, yet gossip rags preferred printing stories about marital strife. George Jones's ventilator hissed like a broken accordion, while algorithms online framed his death as peaceful. In truth, peace is seldom granted when lungs drown from within and alarms ratchet to maximum volume. The price of idealizing heroes is that we sanitize the only details that might warn future heroes away from identical cliffs, polishing courage while hiding consequences. Honesty about decay is not cruelty. It is the only tribute proportionate to the songs that once told the truth about heartbreak. Yet within the brutal theater of dying, brief mercies appear. Conway Twitty's aneurysm ruptured so swiftly that consciousness never had time to interpret agony. The darkness came like stage lights switching off between numbers. Glenn Campbell, lost within shifting neural fog, was spared the precise awareness of his own fading. Some families take cold comfort in knowing their loved ones did not linger in torment like Waylon Jennings, whose neuropathy visited nightly with needles of fire before his final sleep. Medical charts rarely reflect those qualitative nuances. A single checkbox cannot capture the difference between seconds of pain and months of it. Nevertheless, survivors recite such differences as mantras when guilt creeps in during quiet kitchen mornings. They remind themselves that sometimes death is not the villain but the understudy who steps on stage when the star collapses, finishing the act so the play does not turn into torture. Newcomers to the Grand Ole Opry instinctively reach down and tap the circle cut from the original pine floorboards, seeking benediction from departed icons. Embedded within that wood are vibrations of every heel stomp, every nervous toe tap, every heartbeat quickening under spotlights. Acousticians say timbre never stops resonating. Frequencies linger like phantom fingerprints, and if that is true, then the planks carry not only cheers, but the subtle stutter of arrhythmic pulses that foretold calamity. Stand there long enough during rehearsal, and you might feel a faint buzz beneath your boots, a subliminal reminder that triumph and fragility share identical grain. It is easier to believe the sensation is stage fright, yet veterans swear the floor hums differently when you call Hank's name or whistle a bar of crazy. Whether superstition or physics, the lesson is the same. Every note vibrates against an undercurrent of eventual silence. Outside the venue, bronze statues immortalize perfect posture, the chin tilt at a money note, the confident elbow of a guitarist, but metal skin cannot arrest cellular decay. Wax museums replicate sequence-stitched suits, but omit the compression stockings hidden beneath for circulation. Gift shops sell mugs stamped with autographs that were perfected after thousands of sound-check scribbles, yet none offer the shaky pen strokes found on last wills composed between doctor consultations. Tour buses ferry visitors past recording studios, explaining microphone placement but rarely mentioning the annex where death certificates are indexed by number rather than name. Convenience matters. Existential vertigo is bad for tourism. So the memorabilia district edits the story, leaving behind only the merchandise-friendly half. A plastic snow globe filled with glitter does not reveal that the songwriter inside once coughed blood onto a lyric sheet, but the paper still exists, yellowed, in a banker's box across town. Acknowledging anatomy need not tarnish melody. In fact, it can burnish it. Knowing that Marty Robbins penned El Paso while recovering from his first heart attack injects urgency into every pistol crack described. Recognizing that Keith Whitley recorded Don't Close Your Eyes with capillaries already swimming in bourbon reframes a tender plea as a desperate confession. Imagining Glenn Campbell flawlessly finger-picking Gentle on My Mind while plaques silently colonized his neural pathways elevates practice into defiance. When we learn these contexts, the songs do not shrink under morbidity. They expand, acquiring vertical depth the way a photograph gains meaning once you discover the subject's name. Mortality does not cancel magic. It explains the exchange rate. Each high note costs something, sometimes an organ, sometimes a year off the back end of life. But the purchase price makes the resonance all the more priceless. Yet danger lies in glamorizing the demise itself. These weren't mythic phoenixes combusting for art. They were parents reminding children about homework, neighbors grumbling over rising gas bills, lovers falling asleep mid-conversation because tomorrow's call time was 5 a.m. sharp. When Hank Williams was zipped into a body bag, coins rattled in his pocket, banal proof that even legends need cab fare. Coroner flashbulbs captured not just expired genius, but also unwashed dishes and half-addressed holiday cards waiting back home. Greatness magnifies humanity rather than erases it, and the morgue is perhaps the one room on earth where that truth is finally undebatable. Any songwriter dreaming of immortality should tour that room before signing publicity photos. The visit might inspire healthier contract clauses, or at least an honest verse about cardiology. So let the next vinyl groove or streaming waveform you cue spin richer, weighted with what you now know. Picture the silent B-side, etched not with another chorus, but with toxicology decimals, case numbers, and the faint outline of a broken propeller. Acknowledge the cost, then turn the volume higher, because remembrance without honesty is worship, and worship without context cannot caution or comfort. 20 autopsies do not compete with 20 #1 singles. They complete them. They prove that every note was purchased in flesh and risk, sung by hearts betting against inevitable failure, recorded by lungs renting borrowed air. May that knowledge thicken the goosebumps on your arms, not with morbidity but with gratitude. For as long as you can hear the crackle of a stylus or the buffer of a server, these voices remain fragile, defiant, and in their vulnerability, immortal. Somewhere tonight, a hopeful songwriter is tightening fresh strings, convinced that technology, vitamin regimens, and better flight data will spare this generation the tragedies cataloged here. Perhaps they are right, Medicine has marched forward, and cockpit dashboards display storms long before wings touch turbulence. Yet entropy has never bothered to study set lists, and the marketplace still pays bonuses for overexertion. The moral hidden in these bodies is not a prohibition against chasing glory. It is a reminder to schedule intermissions. Book the checkup, cancel the red eye, let the silence between notes be restorative rather than terminal. If tomorrow's headliner heeds that advice, the drawer at the end of the corridor may stay empty a little longer, and the neon outside the morgue might flicker less often. But should the worst still happen, may some future witness remember to record the full truth, and may we be brave enough to listen. Really listen hard. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.